وهذا كتاب أنزلناه مبارك فاتبعوه واتقوا لعلكم ترحمون.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a really fascinating exploration. We're looking at a profound text that many consider a complete guide to life. We've got excerpts here from the Holy Qur'an, the complete guide to life, and well, our mission is to unpack its claims. Claims about being this truly comprehensive blueprint for existence, maybe far beyond what you might initially expect. Okay, so let's try and unpack this core idea first. The material we have presents the Quran as, and I'm quoting here, the last divine revelation, intended by God to be a constitution for life, a practical schedule, and a straight path to success in this world and the afterlife.
Wow. I mean, that's a pretty grand statement, isn't it? It suggests a reach, well beyond just purely spiritual matters.
It really does. And what's fascinating, perhaps unexpected for some, is this emphasis on it being completely all-encompassing. It immediately sort of challenges that narrow perception you might have. It sets the stage for a much broader discussion, really, about how a sacred text, at least according to this source, can inform and, well, actively shape every single facet of human experience, from the deeply personal right through to the societal level.
Okay, so let's dive right into that claim then, that the Quran is a complete system of life. The text we have explicitly says it's not just limited to, acts of worship like prayer or fasting or charity. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. It's described as addressing all aspects of life. So how does the source suggest such a spiritual text can actually bridge that gap, to practical everyday civil life? What are some of these maybe unexpected areas it claims to cover?
That's a great question. And the material, it really does drill down into the practicalities. So, for instance, you look at family. It discusses how you should interact with parents, with your children, with spouses. And this isn't just like abstract principles. It's presented as guidance for actual daily relationships.
And it gets into really practical stuff too, like the economy, right?
Yeah.
The text mentions lawful trade, strictly avoiding usury, which is called a riba.
Yeah.
Riba. And this concept of economic equality. Now, for an audience maybe more familiar with modern finance, how does the source explain the reason behind banning riba? And what does it propose, even broadly, as like an alternative economic approach that supports this equality idea?
Yeah, that's a key point.
Yeah.
The source indicates that banning riba isn't just some arbitrary rule. It's framed as a really foundational principle, aimed squarely at preventing exploitation and ensuring that wealth, circulates more equitably within society, instead of just concentrating in a few hands. So it champions transactions based more on mutual benefit, on shared risk, promoting a more ethical and maybe more stable economic environment overall. And then moving on, there's justice, covering fairness, protecting people's rights, actively combating oppression. This even includes, judicial fairness, even when dealing with adversaries.
Okay, so it's really about actively engaging in creating a just society then, not passive. And crucially, it also addresses governance and leadership, touching on things like responsibility, consultation. That's shura, isn't it?
That's right.
And ruling with justice. Now, the source suggests shura isn't just about getting advice, but it's a principle. It fosters collective decision-making. How does the text suggest this actually works? How does it empower that principle and practical leadership?
Well, the material implies that shura, this consultation, is a vital component for legitimate and effective governance. It suggests leaders are actually, bound to consult with the people affected by their decisions, making it a cornerstone for collective well-being, for accountability. And this ties back to your earlier point, host speaker, and highlights that this text isn't meant for just passive reception. It demands active engagement. The source explains how it offers guidance when you're facing, say, sadness, fear, or life burdens. It teaches patience, supplication, and trust in God. But equally, during times of success, it teaches gratitude and seeking God's grace. So it's presented as this really dynamic guide, adapting to your emotional and spiritual state.
Yeah, that active engagement piece feels really key. And the source also points out that the Quran is meant to be a direct message. It's not just stories to read and forget. There's a specific quote here. This is a book which we have sent down to you, that they might reflect upon its verses, and that those of understanding might be reminded. So it's really intended for personal reflection, personal action, a constant source of guidance, day to day. Okay, now building on that, this idea of it being a comprehensive guide for this life. I think many people might still associate a text like this primarily with the afterlife, thinking of salvation as purely a future thing. Does the source directly challenge that perception, that common idea about salvation versus earthly impact?
Oh, absolutely. It directly confronts that. The material explicitly states that those who truly practice the Qur'an succeed in both this world and the hereafter. For this world, it promises things like a stable life, justice, and blessings. I mean, it's very tangible, right?
It's very tangible, yeah.
And then, for the hereafter, it promises God's pleasure and paradise. So it essentially frames the Qur'an as a pathway to, well, holistic well-being, right here, right now. It's not just about spiritual salvation later on. The success is meant to be dual.
So what does all this mean for us, then? As we wrap up this deep dive, our look into these sources, it really paints a picture of the Qur'an as, quoting again, God's most direct and wise word. And it's presented as the only complete guide to success in life, described as a light that illuminates our hearts, minds, and actions. It's quite evocative language.
It is, and the core message seems crystal clear from the source material. If we make the Qur'an our guide and our constitution, we will certainly be among the successful ones of this world and the hereafter. The material concludes really beautifully, I think, with the verse. Those who follow the guidance of their Lord are the successful ones.
That's a powerful note to end on, and maybe a powerful thought to leave you, our listener, with. How might your own life change if you approached a foundational text? Or maybe a philosophy you hold dear, not just as, a source of abstract wisdom, but as a practical, comprehensive constitution, something designed to guide every facet of your existence, from how you treat your family to how you engage with your community, even the economy. Definitely something to reflect on.
أنت نور الله فجرا جئت بعد العسر يسرا ربنا أعلاك قدرا يا إمام الأنبياء